Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Today we're going to do a little bit of a 2023 year in review. How did it all begin, you ask? Well, funny story. See, there was a cocktail party, and a lady was at this cocktail party, and someone else at the cocktail party recognized the words Dungeons and Dragons. And then that lady was swiftly driven blind as her eyeballs converted into rock-solid dollar signs as she realized that the company she ran was worth $40 gajillion, and she was owed all of it. Like any greedy company, they don't like competition. And this company happened to have tied itself with this thing called the Open Games License, which allowed a lot of people to make amateur competition. Everyone who wrote an OSR game or a 5e product and put it out there for sale was stealing money from Wizards of the Coast. That was their money. They were the ones who were supposed to have made that book that they didn't write, that you wrote instead. And they had to take that license away from you because they need to make sure they control their brand, because they were going to make $40 gazillion, guys. They were going to make so much money. There's going to be movies and toys and TV shows, and there's going to be like 50 spin-offs of Critical Role. And everyone's going to come play the VTT and give them $30 a month, and everything was going to be great. But all those people who were stealing from them by using that Open Games license, their dirty little rebellion, it soured public sentiment against them. They tried to do damage control. They sent a guy out to do the rounds, doing podcasts, making sure to let everyone know that, hey guys, don't worry. This brand's great. That's why we need to encourage the largest demographic of gender and race that plays our game to leave the hobby as fast as possible so they can be replaced by a bunch of kids who are more interested in playing power games and feeling like they have some sort of sense of control over other people while masking themselves and just being altruistic and caring about the little guy. We did our best as a company to trick well-meaning people politically into supporting us, the big super mega corporation, by making them think that they're standing against bigots, while we, manufacture all of our books and miniatures and toys and accessories with, questionably ethically sourced labor overseas. So we can pass the savings on to you as you give us $30 a month to play our virtual torture tomb. Then the movie didn't do well. Well, let's blame it on the fact that it had D&D in the name, and it's nerds. People hate nerds, right? Fucking nerds. It had nothing at all to do with the fact that we had just pissed all over all of our brand goodwill just months prior to that movie's release. But don't worry, investors, everything's fine. Everything's fine. We know what we're doing. We got the situation locked down now. We put everything out in the public domain in such a way that people who want to use it still kind of have to acknowledge the fact that we were the geniuses who invented buying the thing that invented the thing. And hopefully no one realizes that the only thing that really made D&D was the cartoony shit like Beholders and Drow, and that most of it's public domain anyway, and always was. They didn't need to know that. We needed to keep them all contained with this license that would constantly acknowledge that they're not the ones writing the stuff that they're writing. That it's really us. We're the geniuses. Thankfully, like a bunch of rabid dogs, though, they've all turned on each other, and so, we can just continue to barrel ahead at turning this thing into a video game, even though it wasn't a video game, and we already had video game versions of it that have their niche, but are hardly dominant forces in the video game market. But don't worry, the video game plan is working. We made a shit ton of money with Baldur's Gate 3. All we had to do was just, throw tits at the situation, and boom, it worked. Not that we will ever admit that in public. That wasn't it. People just crave D&D. So anyway, let's look at a montage of clips from some videos from across this year, some of the more better viewed videos I've put out, and a few ones here and there that had things that I think should have gotten better views so the people can hear what I had to say. I'm not quite sure yet, as of the recording of this in this moment, what this montage is going to include, so we can sit back and enjoy the fun of discovery together.
I don't think it takes a whole lot of thought to piece together that one D&D is going to be a colossal failure. We already have online role-playing games. We have MMORPGs, the ability to make your own little custom avatar and hang out with your friends virtually and go on little adventures. We already have those. And as much as they want to deny that 1D&D is not going to be a video game, there's a lot of emphasis on this virtual tabletop, and of course all the stuff about them wanting to monetize every little thing for the players and not just the dungeon masters, who really are their only customers. Players are not their customers, but they want the players to be their customers. You know, there's it's not a guarantee, but there's a strong chance that AI systems that can, serve as a dungeon master will probably play a factor into this and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, we've already had these things. We already know how this is going to evolve. Think back to the Elder Scrolls, the early games of the Elder Scrolls, your Daggerfalls, your Morrowinds, popular amongst people who understood and appreciated tabletop role-playing games. But as the game series went along and they wanted to keep scooping up more and more people into playing their games, they had to simplify the combat system and streamline things and make it less, that annoying where you keep striking over and over again and the dice mechanics aren't working, and, so you're not just running up and just striking it with your sword visually and scoring a hit automatically. The later games started doing that kind of stuff because they wanted to bring in the casuals. And just like any money-making enterprise, obviously 1D&D is, even if they start off trying to stick to the book as much as they can, so to say, over time they will start doing those sorts of little adjustments to how it works. I would like us all to take a moment and envision the future. Project yourselves 2 or 3 years in the future. 1D&D has successfully launched. And thanks to the amazing star power of Chris Pine and Hugh Grant, the numbers of people who are now interested in D&D, thanks to Honor Amongst Thieves, surges to an all-time high. So high, in fact, that they can finally achieve what they've always dreamed of at the corporate level, which is to completely wipe out and replace the existing fan base with new, dumber fans. And now you have 1D&D, an online virtual realm where you can funnel and control everything that's going on in your games, and you can milk those sweet, naive players for every last fucking penny they have in their pocket. Oh, the profits to be had. They will be great. And I want you to think, though, those new DMs that are going to be having to step up to take in the shoes of all the dungeon masters who are about to completely quit Dungeons & Dragons entirely over the course of the next year and switch to other systems. Hopefully, some of my systems. Be sure to check out Total Party Skills on Draft RPG. Now, there's some other news that's going on that I find of interest. Apparently, there's been some new leak about what the new version of the OGL is shaping up to be like, and apparently there is language in it that attempts to basically declare the previous OGLs as no longer valid agreements. Now, whether or not that's going to hold up in court, it's not for me to surmise. However, Hasbro, things are very, lopsided with Wizards of the Coast since they're owned by a company as large as Hasbro. They can bring a level of legal trouble to bear that no one else can, really bring on their side. So how many people are just going to capitulate to the demands without even pushing things to actually see where the line really is in the courts as to how much of D&D can even be copyrighted? Most of the creatures in Dungeons & Dragons are public domain. Things from history are public domain. Aside from a few quirky, specific, invented monsters, there's really not a whole lot in the creature catalog of Dungeons & Dragons that can really be copyrighted, except for specific named NPCs, specific named settings, stuff like that. The rule system, though, you can copyright or trademark a specific engine design for a car, but you can't trademark the concept of engines for cars, and all engines for cars are going to have a lot of common factors, otherwise they're not able to function as an engine for a car. And so, there are limits to how much that, they can claim to own game mechanics in and of themselves. PBS has put out an article about how Gary Gygax was a racial essentialist. Yeah, no shit. Everyone back then was. You know what? I'm willing to bet good money that whoever founded Hasbro was probably a racial essentialist. Hell, whoever founded PBS was probably a racial essentialist, because racial essentialism has been a prevalent, dominant theory in human thinking for quite some time. It still kind of is. It's part of why people hand-wring so much about it when it gets brought up, because they feel guilty. Because it's just how people think. God forbid Gary Gygax thought that maybe halflings would have slightly less strength and slightly more dexterity than your average human being. But like, it's just all a setup. Start planting the seeds out there in the media, so that the established corporate media can all back each other up and say like, we're not in the wrong. These people are on the wrong. But don't worry, everybody. Don't worry, investors. Keep giving Wizards of the Coast that money to keep supporting us from quarterly report to quarterly report, because we got Chris Pine on the way, and he's gonna bring in so many kids. Everyone loves Chris Pine. He's the biggest star ever. And with this new audience, we can just declare all the old audience that isn't willing to play along with us, they're just a bunch of bigots and racial essentialists, and we don't have to listen to them. Well, they don't have to listen to them. And those people don't have to give Wizards of the Coast any more money. I hate saying I told you so, but actually, no, I like saying I told you so. Hi, I'm King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. I started the channel a couple years ago as a platform to, build an audience for role-playing games I'm writing and self-publishing on DriveThruRPG and on Amazon. I'm just regular Joe, kind of a fella. So it's not exactly like I have a huge advertising budget or a crew or anything. It's just stuff I've been making myself on a Chromebook, of all things, and putting out there. The product I'm selling is inspiration and ideas. I'm not selling you a book of fancy art and stuff. I intentionally have a aesthetic quality to my products that is supposed to be invoking old-fashioned zines and raw underground punk rock kind of gaming, where I'm leaving an awful lot up to the imagination of the reader to fill in the blanks about what they want things to look like, or to come up with parts of the setting that I don't detail and things like that, because that is what gaming used to be, and I'm trying to get to the real heart of what the OSR spirit is, and that OSR spirit is not actually the D20 rule system. I think that's why there's so many variants of the OSR. So many different people keep trying to recreate that feeling from the original Dungeons & Dragons box sets from the late 70s and early 80s, and yet none of them quite do it perfectly. And I think part of that problem is that all these books are written by people who are informed by 40-plus years of playtesting that's been going on with the D20 rules. Everyone's familiar with everything at this point. There's no question marks left. Every problem that has cropped up over the years has been solved by one edition or another, and you can't help but to bring that with you when you're trying to write a new version of those old rules. And so you can strip down the power creep and try to get back to the original core classes and races and leveling system and all that kind of stuff. But what you can't recapture is the virgin territory effect that D&D used to have. And that's what I'm trying to replicate with my rule system. And I encourage people to check it out. In fact, my bias on this channel is that, well, frankly, it's to my best interest if D&D fails and turns off the fan base, because that means that there's a slightly higher likelihood of catching people who are going to be suddenly open-minded to the idea of looking at a product that's a bit more, raw and fresh than these overly polished turds that are for sale out there, that are just keep repeating and regurgitating the same rule systems and the same settings. Oh, another fantasy world based vaguely on medieval Germany and medieval England. How original, Does it have elves in it, perchance? I'm playing with B-movie concepts, pulp fiction kind of concepts, very, public domainy kind of stuff. Since I don't have a publisher or any of that kind of stuff backing me, I don't really want to throw myself into something too original, if you catch my distinction. But everything I have is supposed to be just fun, simple concepts that people actually like playing. You can get your head around, you can describe it to your players well, and you can just hop on in and get running with it without very much baggage. But anyway, what was I saying about I told you so? Well, one of the things that I've been talking about on this channel since I started is about the fact that the first, role-playing game book I put out on DriveThruRPG was Orc and Bone, which was a OSR setting I made about a world where humanity has disappeared in kind of like a weird anti-rapture event, and now orcs, of all people, find themselves being the ones having to, save a bunch of halflings and other, kind of hanger-on people who are living on the edges of civilization and are now being attacked by all the weird vampires and monsters that were still lurking in the human cities and are now extra hungry and have been enslaving halflings as blood bags and stuff like that. The thing I found kind of interesting about it, the whole experience, is I really did not like having to copy-paste on the OGL license at the end of it. It actually makes you sit there and think about the language in it a bit more as you're doing it, and I just didn't like the feeling of, basically saying that, none of this I just wrote is actually for me. I'm just, just riding on other people's coattails, yada, yada, yada. It felt like it kind of deflated the sense of purpose to it, you know. I don't know, it's just vague. And also there's just things about it that struck me as kind of aberrant, that a big corporation would allow something like this to be out there, that a company that's hungry for money is just going to kind of like freely allow such direct competition. You know, it was strange. And I'd have people explain to me, oh, you know, so-and-so made sure the OGL was there to make sure the Wizards of the Coast couldn't ruin the game for everybody and all that kind of stuff. You know, I'd consulted with the RPG pundit for Orc and Bone, paid him, had a couple Skype conversations with him, you know, about the materials and all that kind of stuff, largely just because I wanted to kind of get somebody in the industry to kind of at least read my stuff and give me some sort of indication whether or not I had any purpose being here. And by his reaction, you know, even if I felt like, okay, you know, I actually have some business in this industry, you know, if I can just get more people to actually look at my stuff and give it a chance. And he was one of the people who was, you know, like, patted me on the head about my concerns that, you know, like, well, can't they just take the OGL away? It just seems weird that they'd let this thing be out here. And it's like, no, man, it'll be fine. The OSR is great. Well, he was wrong. I mean, like, you know, it's not been officially released, and there, who knows what kind of litigation stuff might change it. But as of now, as we all know who've been paying attention, the OGL license that Wizards of the Coast is trying to put out to replace the older OGL license invalidates the older OGL licenses, because they want to funnel everything back in-house. But that kind of means, though, if they can actually get it to stick that the old OGL is no longer a valid agreement, well, then that basically destroys the bulk of the OSR products that are out there. Yeah, you know, not everyone's going to have to pay royalties, obviously, at least not at first, but, you know, they could use it as grounds just to you know, blanket have it removed from sites like DriveThruRPG or Amazon or other places that provide, you know, RPG products. Just because, from a business standpoint, why would you want someone nibbling up your potential customer base, especially when you're now on this thing where you're going to monetize the players? It's no longer just the DMs, you know, the players who are playing those OSR games. Like, they're not buying original hair colors for their elf avatars on D&D Beyond. No, you know, they gotta rope everyone into this as much as possible and crush the competition. And I felt like I've seen it coming. I felt like I've been talking about this whole fucking time. And, like, I don't know, maybe on some level, to be quite honest, it's a little annoying that, like, plenty of other channels are, like, getting traction on this topic and, you know, having, like, you know, big surges in subscriber count and stuff, and they're just now kind of on the page about this. I predicted this was going to happen. That this greedy-ass company that's not at all being run by people anymore who have any attachment to the thing that they're selling, because they're all from different kinds of businesses, and they had just, our whole business culture is not in tune with the culture on the bottom, let's say, in a variety of ways, and this was inevitable. And I don't know. It's just, I guess because I don't pre-script my videos and I'm not dancing around in front of a green screen showing pictures from books and crap like that, and there's no little tinkle of free public domain music underlying my videos, like, you know, like, fuck me, right? I don't know. But those of you who've been watching my channel from the get-go know very well I've been saying these things. I've alienated people by saying stuff like this, like the OSR seems, I don't know, like, it's cool, it has its place, I like the philosophy behind it, but this attachment to the D20 rule system means it's going to forever be living in D&D's shadow. And because it's in that shadow, it rises and falls on D&D's coattails, and since it's in such close proximity to D&D, it doesn't really take D&D all that much to slightly move its foot over and crush it beneath its jackboots. So, here we are. RPG Pundit was wrong. I was right. And goddammit, I deserve a few subscribes for that. Apparently before, WotC is going to finally get around to addressing this controversy they've caused, which, to me, seems like they've delayed a little too long. They should have nipped this in the bud quicker. But before they're going to address that, they wanted everyone to know that they got a new television series coming from Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus, that bastion of streaming services, formerly known as CBS All Access, that's already given us such great hits such as all these new Star Treks that the fan base for Star Trek has accepted and love unquestioningly. So clearly, this is all lining up to be a great thing. Or not, or it's just a distraction. Unfortunately, like a parent with a fussy child, WotC has just pulled out a nice jangly-dangly set of car keys and are dangling them in front of everyone to see who gets distracted. Well, I mean, I know they've threatened to take away, you know, everyone's right to use Dungeons & Dragons rules like an open source product that they can make compatible books with and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's a TV show. I mean, that's more important, isn't it, right? Passive entertainment. That's what D&D has always been about. It's the passive entertainment with the big stars and ongoing stories and plots. You know, since Honor Amongst Thieves isn't out, obviously, yet, and the show, I mean, they're just announcing it. Like, there's no guarantees it's ever actually going to see the light of day, but assuming it all goes through and stuff, I'm curious if we'll see a similar problem with the increasing number of role-playing game entertainment that you see with, when they try to turn video games into movies and stuff like that. And that is part of what doesn't translate into movies well for video games, and why I think a lot of video game movies feel a little lackluster and hollow, is that to the audience that is familiar with the material, they are used to having, some control and sway over the course of events, and so it's weird seeing that as just completely passive thing, that the storyline is locked in the one way and the one way only. The thing about D&D is that, it's supposed to be about getting together and each having your own characters, and all the weird, random ways the story can evolve because of players having conscious involvement, as opposed to just, having their actions dictated by the writer. I don't know how well that's going to translate anything what D&D's like to a potentially, new playing audience of kids and stuff. They're just going to be watching a cheeseball, childish fantasy show that's probably going to be, at most, maybe as edgy as Willow, maybe. Part of this whole thing with the OGL is they want to, clamp down on that brand recognition, so they can, control what's going on with D&D. They want it to be family-friendly at all times, because we come to another one of the essential problems about this whole thing with Dungeons & Dragons and their owners. Hasbro is a toy company. They make little transforming plastic robots for babies. Dungeons & Dragons is a game ostensibly for people ages 12 and up. This is for teenagers and young adults and adults, not for little 6-year-old babies. But Hasbro only knows how to market to 6-year-old babies, and so we'll just have to see how things evolve. And we'll see how the 6-year-old babies that are in the forms of adults are going to handle this news. Will the dangling of these keys be successful? Will it distract everyone and finally get them to stop talking about all these oogie, just legal terms and licenses? Ew, that's gross. I don't want to think about it. I want to speculate as to, are they going to get Benedict Cumberbatch to play a Goliath? I wonder what IP-branded, trademarked character races, species, will be featured in this show. Is it going to be set in Forgotten Realms? Oh my god, it'd be so amazing if we could finally see Waterdeep on television. I've always dreamed of this moment. Oh my god. So we'll see. Increasingly bubbling through the community is the stuff that Wizards has been kind of throwing out there in their public statements, wanting to remind everybody that this whole mess with the OGL is really about, putting an end to hateful content, and, making sure that everything's inclusive, even though it already was. And they're raising prices on things, which is inherently less inclusive, but that's all besides the point. Something I'm starting to notice in other D&D channels, people who are maybe a bit more mainstream than I am, in terms of their tastes and, things they think, and all that kind of stuff. They're being a little confused by some of these things that are being thrown out there by Wizards. They hear hateful content, they look around and they don't see any. They're told that things need to be more inclusive, and they've been trying really hard for years, most of their lives, to be inclusive people. So, what's going on? Misinformation? Now we're starting to hear about how D&D YouTubers have been spreading misinformation. Well, we've heard of misinformation. That's been a buzzword for at least 6 years now. Not misinformation. No. What if someone got on YouTube and said something that was slightly wrong, or they misphrased it, or maybe they just didn't know and were only offering opinion, and I took it as literal truth. And people are kind of like, okay, where's the misinformation? Or okay, here's the guy accused of misinformation. D&D shorts. He's a new villain. Let's check him out and crucify him. Well, I don't know. Guess that's not that bad. The thing is that they are saying these things about you, about us. They're not, aiming this at specific targets. They've already eliminated, quote unquote, most of their targets, from at least, the internet end of the conversation and all that. So, what is this hateful content they're talking about? Who's been making this hateful content? You look at Drive Thru RPG, the only section of that website where all the books have these big, long disclaimers about how everything was so hateful and racist back then, and all the people writing these games were racist with their racist ideas and biological essentialism. Well, that's all Wizards of the Coast stuff now, isn't it? The most prominent, notorious incidents of things having to be censored out of mainstream publications have been Wizards of the Coast's own books, a la Volo's Guide to Monsters, and more recently, the Spelljammer campaign set for 5th edition. Weird. Could they possibly just be meaning you, innocent you? They're saying that, you are a purveyor of hateful conduct, hateful content, misinformation, even? That's probably a little confusing. You haven't yet had this directed at so many people that you've been caught up in being one of these terrible obstacles that are in WotC's way to achieving greatness and full monetization. And I don't know if this is going to be a wake-up call. There just seems to be like this kind of like sense of, if everyone was cartoon characters, there's a little bit of like, they're scurrying about. They heard the dinner bell and they're like, where's the hateful content? Where? Who's doing it? Get them. Not realizing that the light's being pointed at them. And we'll just see how that evolves. The people at Wizards of the Coast are not stewards of role-playing games, or specifically at Dungeons & Dragons. You can't even really say they're the people who own Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons as a brand is owned by a brand that is a self-floating entity known as a corporation with the name of Hasbro that doesn't have any singular ownership. There's no one person you can trace this down to anymore. I'm sure whoever founded Hasbro and they originally had control of their company, but they're long since gone. It's an entity, and so the people who are calling them stewards are merely employees of a company that owns something. The High King of Dungeons & Dragons door didn't appoint them to be stewards of the land until their return. They're using flowery language to both make it seem like what they're doing is more noble than what it is, but also kind of like on another flip side, the fact that that's where they decide to go with how they want to present themselves. Stewards. They're stewards of this grand and noble tradition. Like I said, the merchant aristocracy is increasingly getting some airs about who they feel their position in life is and how they relate to the rest of us. The fact that their own customer base would be deemed to be obstacles to get money that they have a right to. They have a right to this monetization. They have a right to your money. And how dare you try to stop them? As soon as they came up with the scheme to make billions of dollars selling people $30 a month subscription fees to go play on a virtual tabletop game, then they had a right to that money because they thought about how they could get that money. They now have a right to it, and you're interfering with that. They told their investors they were going to get this money if they gave them some money to help, with the startup costs and the R&D. And you're interfering with their right to get what's rightfully their money, not your money. Just weird. Something to think about. I couldn't sleep. Woke up at like 4:30. I was having a weird dream. It wasn't a bad dream. It was just really banal and didn't seem to have any end in sight. So I made myself wake up, and now I'm up. It's the morning after. Victory was achieved in the war against Wizards of the Coast, or something like that. I should probably say, quite genuinely, a big thank you to Wizards of the Coast. If it weren't for all these weeks of controversy, I'd probably still just barely have over 900 subscribers and relatively stale channel growth. Now I've jumped up quite a bit. In fact, last I looked, I actually got more subscribers than Venture Satanis. Ha ha! But now what? I mean, seriously, now what for all of us? What do we do with all that angst to anger? How do we turn things back and go back to normal? I guess this is a question that's asked of people after many earth-shattering event comes rolling through people's lives. I don't know. Like I said, last night, I still kind of don't really know how I feel about it. Just scrolling through, the news feed this morning after I got up, I caught a glimpse of someone's video I've never seen before, just some kid in his 20s maybe, just being all happy that, the OGL and the SRD are now going to be in the Creative Commons, and he had a Rise of Skywalker shirt on, and it's, oh god, I can't take that seriously. Rise of Skywalker is an objectively bad movie. I don't care how you feel about, like the politics of Star Wars over the last half decade, but I can't take anyone seriously who's wearing a Rise of Skywalker shirt unless they're doing it ironically, and I didn't get the vibe that dude really does irony much. But anyway, don't even know the guy's name, so I don't even know who the fuck I'm talking about. It's just something I saw a few minutes ago that just made me kind of cringe a little bit on the inside. Are we all going to go immediately back to turning on each other? I've made a few comments in some recent videos along the lines of, like, hopefully now that this is all said and done with this controversy over the Open Games license, that, and as people start to peel away from D&D and start looking into other games, just to, at the bare minimum, take a break from it, that we need to try to make sure we don't start to split up into little camps that all start nitpicking each other to death over this. However, as easy it is to say such things, and as easy it is for people to agree with such sentiments when they hear them in the moment, humans are psychologically driven creatures, and so various environmental stimuli, emotional stimuli, and just basic raw human instincts and patterns of life will assert themselves as time goes on. And I do sense that there is a rather sizable split in the making. It's already starting to come apart, I feel, and that's part of why I make these little statements of like, hey guys, remember, let's not fall off the cliff. By viewer request, I'm going to finally do a video I've been putting off for a long time. I've been reluctant to have to get into this, but unfortunately, today is the day that we all have to finally face our inner demons and search within our souls for answers we did not want to have to ever receive. I'm, of course, talking about, as you can tell by the video title, the top 5 ways that you can play an elf. Now, there's a couple different ways I could have come across making this video. Originally, it was just kind of a sarcastic comment, and I could just still play it as totally sarcastic and basically just tell you about all the different elf races that are already in the books that you already know about because you know how to read. And, or, I could try to take it super seriously. But that's not what I do, so I'm going to go for something a little bit in between. Let's say 5 play styles of elf that you can model off famous actors who you all know and love. And I'm going to rank it, obviously 5, going from the least to the best. We'll start with number 5, which would be the Liv Tyler elf. Your Arwen, nice, good beginner elf. You don't have to have a lot of dialogue. You basically just have to stand there and look pretty. That's what elves do at their most basic level. Occasionally you might, have like a small monologue or something, but, you're just dipping your toe into playing role-playing games or just playing elves, and you're not really quite sure what to do with it. One of the easiest answers is just to be stoic and look good. So the Liv Tyler elf is, the least on the list because it is the most basic. Number 4, we're gonna go with the Idris Elba, or the Idris Elfa. Obviously, they're wanting to recharacterize dark elves to be more heroic, and Idris Elba is not a bad model for that. He's extremely charismatic. The ladies love him. He's got a particular gravitas that he brings to roles. If you're looking for an elf ranger, perhaps, Idris Elba is not a bad choice. He'd be a great Dritz, let's face it. But number 3 cues off some of the qualities of the Idris Elba, in that it's for someone who's got good charisma, is able to deliver their lines, knows their place in the script, isn't trying to outshine everybody, is funny, affable, is the guy in the party most likely to bring beer to the game session, and that would be the Chris Hemsworth elf. I think it speaks for itself. Like I said, he's kind of nice smack dab in the middle of the list at number 3 because he's just a good team player. He can crack a joke. He can, he knows how to, run his combat stats for big climactic moments. He knows how to take an L and learn how to play off that, and maybe allow his character to gain a little weight before he has to go work it off hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Chris Hemsworth is a pretty solid choice. But number 2, this is for the craftier people who might have enjoyed that one, ex-elf orc, leader of the orcs, I can't remember his name now, from the Rings of Power show. Like the one actual good character that was in that show. If you can remember, be sure to tell me in the comments that guy's name. But that would be the James Woods elf. The James Woods elf. There's a lot of times where people aren't going to like him. They might actually despise the guy, but every once in a while there'll be moments when he's just in the right place and just in the right role where he's just perfect for it. Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. The other day in the comments, someone had Left a comment that was kind of sad, but also understandable, and I guess, just kind of speak to the phenomenon a little bit. That was someone saying that basically all this controversy for the last 2 months has caused them to actually quit D&D. As I recall, they said they basically packed up all their books and minis and maps and accessories and took them all upstairs and hid them in the attic. Now, subconsciously, I guess they are kind of giving themselves an out where they could always go back up to the attic and dig their stuff back out and bring it back down. Never say never, forever's a long time, and all that other kind of stuff. People change, times change, opinions change as you grow older, so hopefully this isn't really the end. But, sometimes you need a break. It's unfortunate from what he was saying that it's also kind of spilled over pretty much the entire fantasy genre, which is also understandable. Because like I said, sometimes you need a break, and it's hardly D&D is the only thing in the fantasy genre that's been controversial. I wasn't quite clear as to whether or not he was saying all role-playing games in general, or just the fantasy games and D&D specifically, or if he's still going to be interested in exploring science fiction and post-apocalypse and, Call of Cthulhu. Horror, that's part of the problem with using terms like fantasy genre anyway, is so many things can be generically swept in with fantasy. Exactly where do you draw the line? But, as I've mentioned a few times in videos over the past, I did have my incident in the early, years of my 20s, where after a Magic the Gathering competition, where everyone was just so petty and heinous, it made me just, want to, take a big, long break and walk away from not only the card game Magic the Gathering, but role-playing games, watching Star Trek, all sorts of stuff. And, it took several years, and largely because of Star Trek reruns being on the spiked cable network in the morning when I'd get home from work, because at the time I was working third shift at 7-Eleven. And so it was one of the only things on when I was, home in the morning after work and up and wanting something to watch that wasn't some stupid talk show. And that kind of slowly rehabilitated me back in to nerd stuff, and eventually got back into role-playing games and so on and so forth, and now here we are. So, to the gentleman who left the comment, as I said, never say never. You never know. It's a good thing. It's not like you took your books out and sold them or, burned them in a pyre or anything extreme. You just put them in a box and put them in the attic, which means you're going to have to make a very conscious effort to decide to go up there and take that shit down when the time is there. But it's still there. We've secretly replaced my wife's half-elves and half-orcs with children of different humanoid kinds. Let's watch and see what happens. So it's just been announced that Wizards of the Coast is officially going to replace the term half-race with children of different humanoid kinds. And I just wanted to get your fresh reaction on video for all the fans.
Wait, what?
Children of different humanoid kinds. Kind of like the Children of the Corn, but they're of different humanoid kinds. It's less racist than calling them half-races.
I understand they don't want to call something half blank, half orc, giving preference to the other half, assuming that one half is the natural half, and the other one is... Oh, you're mixed with what? But children of different humanoid...
Kinds.
Kinds?
It doesn't really change anything. They still function the same. So it doesn't, it's just purely a thing of terminology. It rolls off the tongue well, doesn't it? The children of the different humanoid corn. Well, anyway, though, do you think you'll be able to, rest easier tonight knowing that this is no longer an issue? Wizards of the Coast has once again pulled it out of the bag and fixed this fire that they inherited when they bought this horribly racist product written in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I will sleep better after I have forgotten this entire conversation.
Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills. Apparently an article from Time magazine is starting to make the rounds, which was written by a self-professed nerdy girl. And since I'm sure people will be talking about it, considering it's in such a quote-unquote high-profile publication, if such things even exist anymore, it'll probably get a little bit more attention. The thing basically kind of reads like a softball ad pitch, just to, convince some people who might be on the fence about Dungeons & Dragons to maybe give it a shot. It was surprisingly sympathetic towards the older gamers from what little there was in it. It's not a terribly long article, very detailed. Like I said, it's just a real kind of just basic level pitch, and there's not a whole lot to say about it. By coincidence, last night, because of Paramount Plus, I finally got around to sitting down and watching Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which, I mean, once again, had not all the controversy erupted at the beginning of the year, probably would have been a much more enjoyable and less self-conscious viewing experience than it turned out to be. On one hand, I applaud their use of trying to use more practical effects, especially for creatures. However, I wish they had gone with a better company, because too often the heads of the various, animal people type characters in Dragonborn were real obviously an animatronic rubber head fitted over another person's head, so they seemed a little oversized. But like I said, at least points for them actually trying to use practical effects and not CGI that'll look good today and look like shit 3 years later. Way too exposition heavy at the beginning. Kind of feels more like jumping into an ongoing campaign than kind of conveying the beginning of a story. I'm not really sure if it really does all that good of a job at conveying the D&D experience because of the things they had to do to try to make it a functional fantasy movie. It did certainly have plenty of references and Easter eggs throughout it. I'm disappointed that Hugh Grant wasn't just Lord Neverember, and instead they had him play another character who was taking over for Lord Neverember. His particular kind of, charisma and guile would have, I thought, suited an interesting portrayal of that character, but I guess they're going with an older, further down the timeline depiction of the ruler of Neverwinter. I mean, for something that tried hard to include things from D&D at the same time, there's a few aspects of it that they didn't really quite convey things properly. There really wasn't anything about how magic that was portrayed that simulated the concept of, spell slots or limitations. The combat was not structured in such a way that you get that turn-based kind of feel from it at all. You could say that a lot of the movie could have been like nods at, jokes about failed persuasion rolls and things like that, or players jumping the gun right before the DM tells them they succeeded and instead, running off with some plan that makes things worse. Kind of like at the beginning when they escape from jail. I mean, the bar was so low for D&D movies, it's not like it had to do all that much to be better than the previous attempts at making a movie out of this content. How does it stack up against other fantasy epics? Yeah, I guess it's alright. It's not the best thing ever. I do feel that there's still better, more inspirational movies that you can watch to get in the mood for D&D than this one, despite all of its Easter eggs and specific references. And just, I don't know. Unfortunately, as I said, there was a self-consciousness I felt while watching it that was born entirely out of, the earlier controversies that Wizards of the Coast brought upon themselves in previous months, which kind of spoiled, one's ability to kind of watch it with completely, clear vision and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to say. It's been a pretty rough week for Middle-earth. As you've undoubtedly heard by now, elves managed to get out of Mirkwood and attack dwarven settlements around the Lonely Mountain. This has ignited a firestorm across the entirety of Middle-earth, as tensions run high in elf and dwarf communities everywhere. Disappointingly, in spite of decades of dwarves supporting orc rights movements, official orc organizations have come out in support of the elves. And in spite of the clear and imminent threat the elves pose to the dwarves, some members of the dwarves are still inclined to want to bring up human supremacy for some reason, despite the fact that the humans are not the ones attacking them and haven't attacked them for almost a century. The human kingdoms of Dale, Rohan, and Gondor have all issued statements in support of the dwarves of Lonely Mountain, but have a problem on their hands with their own half-elf populations who seem to be taking the side of the elves, since they were never properly taught about human values and history. And now the dwarves are blockading off Mirkwood and are about to destroy the entire forest, which by the time that is over, people will have forgotten the original acts of elf hostility, and all the blame will be heaped upon the dwarves yet again. And these are, of course, issues that most people should be talking about. It's a bit hard to want to, make Middle-earth tube videos about Dungeons & Dragons, or, oh no, Taylor Swift's movie might have depressed audience attendance because of the war in Mirkwood. Like, who cares? Unfortunately, because of the divide between the leadership of the human countries and the half-elf activists that they've raised, it's a little hard to tell exactly which side is safest to come out in support of in the long term. I must say there is a certain historical irony that the dwarves have been pushed into a position that they're about to be blamed for committing a genocide on elves. I've even seen people try to justify the elves' actions by saying it would have been okay for the Ents to wipe out the humans who occupied their land. Which, if I were an Ent, I'd be maybe a little insulted that these people are just making these declarations that besmirch my own Entish morality, but that's just me. Obviously, I'm just trying to take the position of what I think I would be like if I were an Ent. But I'm not an Ent, so who knows? Maybe I would be bitter about humans living in Hobbiton and the Shire and Bree in such close proximity to holy sites like the Old Forest and Tom Bombadil that I would have a different perspective. But unfortunately, I can only really speak from the human point of view. So let's hope that the dwarves don't go overboard, and let's hope that the elves don't manage to manipulate everyone into thinking that somehow this is entirely brought upon them out of nowhere. The elf-dwarf conflict goes back thousands of years in Middle-earth, to a point where most people don't even really understand the whys, and in modern times want to make it all about politics and resource struggle, and don't want to acknowledge the religious influence of the Silmarillion. So anyway, on this day of global magic, I want you all to be safe, and just remember that while we might want to be neutral in all of this, unfortunately, nations like Dale and Rohan have interfered a lot throughout the past, and so whether we like it or not, we are kind of a part of this whole story. So, make of that as you will. Until next time, stay waspinated. Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Krampus. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. This morning, after I got up, I made the mistake of spending a little time doom-scrolling down X. Kind of just on the thought of, maybe I could see if there's any TTRPG news I could actually talk about, instead of just making videos about my own games or writing posts about stuff that no one wants to talk about. So, apparently people are still complaining about consent rules. I don't know, I don't think there's such a thing as a TTRPG community anymore. It was already divided and fractious and kind of barely really a community. It was a community in terms of it being like a marketing term to try to make people feel like they're a part of something for buying products. But, you're the only real TTRPG community anyone really needs to be concerned with is themselves and the people they are actually playing with. And everyone else are just other hobbyists, but it's not a community. We don't all live together on the same street and have little music festivals and shit. But I remember earlier this year, back when my channel kind of slightly grew, before collapsing right back in on itself in terms of the algorithmic, the numbers game and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't talking about things that were, having good traction anymore, so I guess, screw me and everyone else who didn't just stick with constantly hammering D&D constantly day in and day out. But, there's only so many things to say. I don't want to be the Dungeons & Dragons equivalent of one of those Star Wars channels that's been making a video every day for the last 8 years talking about how annoying Rian Johnson is. We know, we get it. Move on to another subject. And if you have nothing else to talk about, take a little break until you have something to talk about. But there's that moment of solidarity in the community right after the OGL fiasco happened. But that did not last long, and in a way, Wizards of the Coast kind of releasing everything into public domain as they did kind of took the energy out of that unity, and now, as predicted, it's all kind of just fallen apart and everyone seems to be at each other's throats, and we still have this issue with hundreds of clones of D&D games whose only real claim to why you should buy it is that it's like D&D used to be. How many of those do we need, guys? Seriously. Especially since you can still actually buy the old D&D anyway, so, I guess it's an easy way to feel like you've written something by just copy-pasting somebody else's shit. But, whatever. Somehow through all this, I still managed to maintain my little trickle of average monthly sales. People seem to like Lady Spy Detective. Girls Gone Vampire is doing pretty well. Still sell copies of Pax Luporum and Expedition to Ancient Egypt. Those come through fairly regularly. Those seem to be like the main games I've put out that seem to have the most ongoing interest from the public, at least in terms of purchasing habits. I still have a few things in the wings for Girls Gone Vampire to put out, and I have like a setting book that's half written for Immortal Arts, although I don't really know if Immortal Arts has really generated that kind of a interest for more products yet, or any of that kind of shit. But generally, though, I find if a role-playing game has some source books, it kind of makes that role-playing game more appealing somehow, for some reason. But, ultimately, though, this community has fallen apart. It's become stupid. It's people arguing over the same old shit, and shit posting against each other and one-upping each other. It was a few weeks ago, I saw something where, they put out a miniature set for D&D where the cleric's in a wheelchair. Are we still on that? You know how, infinite the amount of character concepts can potentially be in a role-playing game? To a point where if someone wants to play a character that's in a wheelchair, fine, whatever. And if someone doesn't, fine, whatever. The consent rules thing, beyond the fact that much like going to a movie, you've agreed to play, so you've kind of consented. And if something happens that you don't like, you can just leave, and not play with these people anymore. If you find that they've done something so questionable that you just can't handle it. People arguing about whether or not you should use role-playing games for therapy. Generally, I would say no. Generally, I would say too many people think they need therapy. Most people just need to find something to do with themselves instead of just constantly staring into their own navel and worrying about what's wrong with them and all that kind of shit. We have no mental discipline as a society. It's just become this free-for-all of me, 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 me.
You got me giving that shit. You want my soul, I don't give a
Hey folks, it's your old pal King Krampus, and welcome to the first annual Total Party Self-Congratulatory Awards, year 2023. Here we'll be taking a look at 5 of the books that Total Party Skills has put out this year that have been voted on to win in their various subcategories, and then which one is the grand champion of them all. But first, a brief word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back after this message. Return to the 3rd century BC and the very dawn of civilization in Pax Luporum, Werewolves of the Republic. Complete with campaign-setting sourcebooks for the island of Sicily and the island of Lesbos. Now available as a collected starter kit edition. Available now on Amazon.com and Drive-Thru RPG. Now first up, we're going to be looking at the category of Best Adventure Mod. The fans voted, you decided, and so the winner for Best Adventure Mod... Stewards and Obstacles! Jingle, 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 That's some good stuff right there. We'll be right back after this message. In the distant future of 1999, Amazon time barbarians fight to liberate the women of North America against vast armies of trolls and chads under the control of the Rogan Joe. This original tabletop role-playing game is thick with 2 C's. Available now on Amazon.com and DriveThru RPG. Next up, we're going to look at the category of Best Sourcebook 2023. And the winner is Bellum Romanum Machina, the Roman war machine for Pax Luporum, Werewolves of the Republic. That's some good stuff right there. Now we'll be right back after this brief message from our sponsor.
Enter a world of magic and the paranormal with Ghosts of the Shadow Zone. 2 complete tabletop games in 1. Featuring source material such as The Young and the Restless Dead and Secrets of the Lesbian Illuminati, as seen in the classic horror tabletop collection. Available now at Amazon.com and DriveThru RPG.
Now, 2023 was the launch year for my Girls Gone Vampire game series, which has already had a lot of books, so they get to have their own little category unto themselves. The core rule books for that game were placed in other categories, so this is just for Girls Gone Vampire source books. And so the winner is Girls Gone Vampire Overexposure. Jingle, 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 jingle,
Get him! Take all his toys!
Now that's some good stuff right there, and we'll be right back after this brief message from our sponsor. I've secretly replaced my wife's Folgers crystals with Orc and Bone. Let's watch and see what happens. Well, good morning, Mrs. Queen Wasp Raider. I have your Folgers crystals.
Thank you. The hell is this?
Help your lady friends wake up the right way with Orc and Bone. It's not coffee. Alright, so we're getting down to the final 2 categories. Next up will be Best Core Rulebook for the year 2023. But first, a brief skit from our sponsor. Well, good morning, fellas. Hi, Kyle. Hey, boss. What's up? Well, actually, just got a call from Cynthia. Apparently, my statement I made about how we're not going to be bringing back Dark Sun has generated an awful lot of interest on the internet over Dark Sun. And so now we're changing our minds, and we're going to go ahead and rush a Dark Sun adaptation out for 5th edition real quick, right before the end of the year. So, need to get on this, immediately. Do you got any ideas? Oh, we have tons of ideas. Everyone here at Wizards of the Coast is known for their originality. Yeah, we have so many ideas, don't worry. The setting's pretty lore-rich, and I don't see a bunch of teen twinks taking interest in learning all that stuff. Do we think we can come up with a different origin for why this planet has been turned into a desert? What about capitalism? Capitalism would work, right? Yeah, we can just blame it on capitalism, corporations, all that kind of stuff. The audience gets that. Oh, that's great. We love selling books that are anti-capitalist to moron children. You gotta admit, we are kind of stupid. So, player character options. What are we going to do about the species in Dark Sun? I hear they're pretty problematic. Well, we can probably salvage the humans, maybe the half-giants. We're probably going to have to cut the halflings and the desert elves out, though, entirely. People are going to make the wrong assumptions about what we're talking about when we have desert elves and jungle-dwelling halflings, so, better safe than sorry. I'm still not quite sure what we should do with the Thri-Kreen, though. Oh, I have a good idea. What if we make the Thri-Kreen gender-neutral? Gender-neutral Thri-Kreen. Yeah. Now, I do have some big ideas for what to do with the dwarves and the mules in the setting. The mules, obviously, are a half-breed between humans and dwarves, and I was just thinking if we could just change their society just a little... Oh, no, we can't have those in any of our games anymore. We haven't made the announcement yet, but Peter Dinklage is really annoyed that we still keep calling those, so we're just gonna cut them out entirely and just avoid the problem. Kind of like we did when we changed species from race. Yeah, that's probably the wisest way we could go with that, and, as a bonus, the older fans will respect us for our great courage. So what are we gonna do about that preserver-defiler thing going on? Absolutely nothing. We're just gonna have people play standard wizard or sorcerer or warlock classes unchanged. Well, we don't got time to write that kind of new material. Are you nuts? Obviously, we can't have slavery in the setting anymore, so what's gonna be the basis for all these city-states that populate Athos? Schools of Magic. We're going to take a page out of our hit book Strixhaven, and every last single city-state in Athos is going to be centered around a whole academy where young magicians can learn their craft, just like in Harry Potter. Oh, that sounds great! I love Harry Potter! If I have one additional note, is try to find a way to work the tabaxi into the setting. If I can throw a cat on the cover of this book, we'll be able to sucker so many more girls into buying this shit. That should be easy enough to introduce them in the environment without destabilizing anything about how the ecology works. No problem. Alright, sounds good. I'll, head upstairs and let Cynthia know and see what she thinks and, get right back to you about whether or not we're gonna give this the green light. Haha, what a delightful scamp. Let's have another. So, hey, you got any progress on the Lord of the Rings movie? We just put out our announcement, and the internet's already buzzing with excitement of our relaunch of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and so we could use some more red meat to throw to the YouTubers to get them buzzing about it. What do you got so far? Well, I got some notes on the cast here. Figured start with that before we start, tailoring the script to their performances. Okay, yeah, casting list for the Fellowship itself is probably a good place to start. Who are our hobbits gonna be? That's gonna be pretty central to anchoring this project and getting people on board with it. Oh, the hobbits? Yeah, that'll be easy. I already got them down. Let's see. I wanted to do something a bit different with Frodo this time, so I was thinking Daniel Radcliffe for Samwise, Kevin Hart. We've saved so much money on having to use CGI to shrink him down. Oh, that's wonderful. I love it when we can save some money on the budget so I can pocket the money myself. Oh, and for Merry and Pippin, I have Elliot Page for Merry and Michael Cera for Pippin. Okay, so who is our Aragorn going to be? Idris Elba. Oh, excellent. We're going to secure so much ESG funding with this cast. I can't thank you enough. So, who's Boromir? For Boromir, I was thinking we would go with Jack Black. Getting better every minute. What about those other two silly characters that were traveling around with the group? The elf and the dwarf, what were their names? Oh, you mean Legolas and Gimli. Yeah, Legolas, I'm thinking we're going to try to tap Aziz Ansari, and Gimli, his best friend, Amy Schumer. Oh, that's nice. I love her stand-up specials. Yeah, once again, we'll save a lot of money on special effects casting Amy Schumer as Gimli. We won't really have to do much. Alright, well, that's a pretty solid list, but people are really going to be judgy if we don't get Gandalf right, so who do you have in mind for that? Oh, Gandalf, we have locked down. It's going to help us bring in a lot of international funding. I was thinking we should go with Chow Yun-Fat. Oh, that's brilliant. If we can get this movie released in the Chinese market, then it won't matter if the North American market likes it or not. Hang on a second, I'm going to see if we can secure a director for this. Oh, hey, Kathleen. Sorry to bother you. Did I catch you at a bad time?
No, I'm just taking some coffee to Bob Iger. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you happen to have any extra directors lying around who might want to ruin this franchise. We're doing Lord of the Rings.
JJ's not doing anything. I'm sure he'd love to come mess that up.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll have my agent get hold of his agent and we'll do lunch. Thank you. Yes, you have a good one. Tell Bob I said hi. All right. Well, it looks like we might have a director on board. Do you have anyone in mind for the villains? Well, we haven't contacted anyone's agents yet, but I was thinking that we might be able to get Adam Driver to play Sauron. Samuel L. Jackson for Saruman would help us avoid people bitching at us for him being the White Wizard. And for Gollum, I'm thinking it's time for Ezra Miller to shine once again. That little scamp. Yeah, we love him around here at the Warner Brothers Studios. I'll make sure we get him locked in with the contract right away. This is going to be amazing. All right, so enough of that. So back to the subject at hand. Best Core Rulebook 2023. And it would appear that the winner is the Tola Party System Rules Handbook. Jingle, 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 So before we move on to the final category, which features the book that also won the Grand Championship poll, we should all take a moment to contemplate the year 2023. It's not been great for everybody, so I guess we'll go ahead and play the in memoriam reel. That's some sad stuff. They will be missed. But anyway, here we are. the dual category, Best Bundle of 2023, and also the winner of the Grand Champion of 2023, Vintage Future RPG!
Yow, 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 Celebratory War 2043 in the house, motherfuckers!
Now that's some good stuff right there, and we'll be right back after this brief message from our sponsor.
Experience the thrills of classic pulp action adventure in Expedition to Ancient Egypt, featuring a variety of sourcebooks to enhance your campaign. Now available in the Ancient Egypt compilation. Get yours today on Amazon.com or DriveThruRPG and begin your time-traveling adventures in the ancient past.
So that's it, folks. The first annual Total Party Self-Congratulatory Awards for the year 2023 have come to a close. Be sure to stick around and check out everything that's going to be coming out in the year 2024 so that for the second annual Total Party Self-Congratulatory Awards, you can hop in and vote on your favorites. And until next time, stay waspinated.
So that's it. It's your 2023 year in review for Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Check out links below in the box for drive-thru RPG PDFs or Amazon.com prints of various books I've put out. And until next year... Oh, and hey, just as a quick public service announcement, did you know that when you see things on the internet that are written and or spoken in such a way that it sounds like it's being addressed to you, but you don't feel that what's being said applies to you, it doesn't. See, people tend to like speak in big, sweeping, public speaking kind of ways of talking where you address a crowd of people that you don't know or see, and so you have to use sweeping generalizations. But you, as someone in that audience, should discriminate whether or not the thing being said actually applies to you. Like the thing I'm saying right now has nothing to do with you. In the moment, I'm standing here in the middle of my yard talking into a camera. You don't exist yet. Who you are could be anyone. Just try to keep that in mind when encountering things on the internet and commenting, because you thought someone said something to you that actually really wasn't being said to you. So anyway, stay waspinated.